When I got home that night, as my wife served dinner, I held her hand and said, "I've got something to tell you." She sat down and ate quietly. Again, I observed the hurt in her eyes. Suddenly, I didn't know how to open my mouth, but I had to let her know what I was thinking. I want a divorce. I raised the topic calmly. She didn't seem to be annoyed by my words. Instead, she asked me softly, "Why?" I avoided a question which made her angry. She threw away the dishes and shouted at me, "You're not a man." That night, we didn't talk to each other. She was weeping the whole night. I knew she wanted to find out what had happened to our marriage, but I could hardly give her a satisfactory answer that I had lost my heart to Jane. I didn't love her anymore. I just pitied her. With a deep sense of guilt, I drafted a divorce agreement which stated that she could own our house, our car, and 30% stake of my company. She glanced at it and then tore it into pieces. The woman who had spent 10 years of her life with me had become a stranger. I felt sorry for her, wasting time, resources, and energy, but I could not take back, as I loved Jane. In the morning, she presented her divorce conditions. She didn't want anything from me but needed a month's notice before the divorce. She requested that in that 1 month, we both have to struggle to live a normal life as possible. Her reasons were simple. Our son had his exams in a month's time and she didn't want to disrupt him with our broken marriage. This was agreeable to me. But she had something more. She asked me to recall how I carried her into her bridal room on our wedding day. She requested that every day for the month's duration, I had to carry her out of her bedroom to the front door every morning. I thought she was going crazy, but just to make our last days together, I accepted her odd request. I told Jane about my wife's divorce conditions. She laughed loudly and thought it was absurd. "No matter what tricks she applies, she has to face the divorce," she said scornfully. When I carried her out on the first day, we both appeared clumsy. Our son clapped behind us. "Daddy is holding Mom in his arms," he shouted. His words brought me a sense of pain. From the bedroom to the sitting room, then to the door, I walked over 10 meters with her in my arms. She closed her eyes and said softly, "Don't tell our son about the divorce." I nodded, feeling somewhat absurd. On the second day, both of us acted much more easily. She leaned on my chest. I could smell the fragrance of her. I realized that I hadn't looked at this woman carefully for a long time. I realized that she was not young anymore. There were fine wrinkles on her face. Her hair was also graying. Our marriage had taken its toll on her. For a minute, I wondered what I had done to her. On the 5th and 6th day, I realized that our sense of intimacy was growing again. I didn't tell Jane about this. It became easier to carry her as the month slipped by. Perhaps the everyday workout made me stronger. She was choosing what to wear one morning. She tried a quiet few dresses but couldn't find a suitable one. Then she sighed, "All my dresses have grown bigger." I suddenly realized that she had grown too thin. That was the reason why I could carry her more easily. Suddenly, it hit me. She had buried so much pain and bitterness in her heart. Subconsciously, I reached out and touched her head. Our son came in at the moment and said, "Dad, it's time to carry Mom out." To him, seeing his father carrying his mother out had become an essential part in his life. My wife gestured to our son to come closer and hugged him tightly. I turned my face away because I was afraid I might change my mind at this last minute. I then went to meet Jane. I told her, "Sorry Jane, I don't want divorce anymore." She then gave me a loud slap and then slammed the door and burst into tears. I walked and drew away. At the floral shop on the way, I ordered a bouquet of flowers for my wife. The sales girl asked me what to write in the card. I smiled and wrote, I will carry out every morning until death do us apart. That evening I arrived home, flowers in my hands, a smile on my face. I ran upstairs only to find my wife in the bed, dead. My wife had been fighting cancer for months, and I was so busy with Jane to even notice. She knew that she would die soon, and she wanted to save me from whatever negative reaction from our son in case we pushed through with the divorce. At least in the eyes of a son, I'm a loving husband. The small details of your lives are what really matter in the relationship. It's not the mansion, the car, the property, the money in the bank. These create an environment conducive for happiness, but cannot give you happiness in themselves. So, find time to be your spouse friend and do those little things for each other that build intimacy. To have a real happy marriage.